In the first podcast episode in this series about the PESO Model Certification, I shared what's new and why it's been rebuilt for how people find information today. In the second, we went deeper into how owned and earned work together as a visibility engine with proof-backed authority you control, which is reinforced by credibility you cannot buy. This week, we're adding shared and paid because even the strongest foundation won't help you if it stays put. As you well know, the way attention moves today is fragmented and fast. People learn in communities, in creator recaps, in peer-to-peer recommendations, in screenshots, in comment threads, and increasingly through AI-generated answers that summarize what appears most consistent and most corroborated. A couple of years ago, Axios wrote a piece about how there are now 12 distinct media realities, from traditional and new media to social media and even the lurkers. That means your audience often gets all of the information they need about you without ever having to visit your website. They'll see a single screenshot of a post, a colleague will forward a newsletter blurb, a creator will summarize your point of view in 3 sentences, someone will ask, what do you think about such and such in a community you're not even in? An AI assistant will pull the most repeated, most referenced signals and present them as if they're the objective truth. If your proof is not traveling in those spaces, you're not just missing reach, you're missing the opportunity to shape what gets repeated about you, which is the real job that shared and paid media are supposed to do inside PESO. Shared and paid aren't add-ons when you have time. They're the distribution and acceleration layers that take the authority you built in owned and earned and move it through the networks that actually influence decisions. Shared media helps your proof travel through trusted networks and shows you how real people describe your ideas when they repeat them. Paid media accelerates what's already working so the right messages reach the right people with consistency, not luck. The problem is that most teams don't run them that way. Shared becomes post because the calendar says so, and paid becomes boosted because the quarter is ending. You get activity without compounding results, and it feels like you're constantly doing more while getting less. On this week's SpinSucks podcast episode, we're going to walk you through how to run shared and paid as part of your PESO model operating system.
If you're a communications pro who works hard, doesn't compromise quality, and gets the job done, welcome home. We'll share our tips, tricks, and stories, and together we will change the face of PR. Spin sucks, but we don't. With the Spin Sucks podcast, here's Gini Dietrich.
Welcome back to the SpinSucks podcast. I'm Gini Dietrich. Before we get started, I have a little tidbit for you. Did you know that if you can't finish watching right now, you can subscribe to the audio version of this show? We're on all the platforms where you get your podcasts, including Spotify and Apple. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter at spinsucks.com and get it in your inbox every Tuesday morning. If shared and paid media are meant to distribute and accelerate proof, why do they often so feel like the messiest parts of the program? It's because most teams are still running them as channels rather than as systems. We were all taught by the experts of the hour that we should spend every day creating, commenting on, and building relationships through content and social media. And then AI got layered in, and suddenly it all became slop and way too overwhelming. The problem with this approach is that shared media becomes a never-ending to-do list. Keep the feeds warm, post consistently, respond quickly, chase whatever format is being rewarded this week. The work is constant, but it's rarely cumulative. You can do everything right by platform standards and still feel like you're starting from zero every Monday. On the flip side, paid media tends to swing between two extremes. Either it's an afterthought, something you do when you remember, or just have on autopilot, or it becomes a pressure valve when leadership wants results right now. The quarter is ending, pipeline is soft, a competitor launched something shiny. Can we put some budget behind this? Becomes a substitute for doing the foundational work of clarity, proof, and sequencing. Both problems come from the same root issue. Shared and paid are being asked to do jobs they were actually never designed to do. They're being asked to manufacture trust. They're being asked to create demand from nothing. They're being asked to make up for a weak story inconsistent proof, or a website that doesn't actually answer the questions that people have. When you put paid and shared in that position, they will absolutely produce activity. They might even produce spikes, but they won't compound. And that's why it feels chaotic. The team is constantly creating new posts for shared media because there's no repeatable distribution plan. It's what should we post today instead of what proof are we moving this week through which networks and in which formats. It's also why paid feels expensive. Budget gets used to push messages that haven't earned the right to be amplified because they aren't clear, they aren't differentiated, or they aren't backed by proof that holds up outside of your own ecosystem. The fix is not posting more or spending more. The fix is to give shared and paid clear roles within the PESO operating system, and then build decision rules so the work becomes repeatable rather than reactive. Shared needs a distribution plan that starts with proof and ends with conversation. Paid needs an amplification plan that starts with what's already working and ends with outcomes you can actually measure. Once those roles are clear, shared stops being noise and starts being a signal. Paid stops being a panic button and starts being an accelerator. Shared media is where attention travels now, but it doesn't travel evenly, and it doesn't travel just because you posted something. It travels through trust, through relationships, through the places where people already gather to compare notes, ask questions, and sanity check decisions. That might be LinkedIn, but it might just as easily be a private community, a Slack channel, a group text, a trade newsletter, a creator's audience, a subreddit, or a niche industry forum. When you treat shared media as posting on social media, you end up optimizing for volume. When you treat shared media as distribution, you start optimizing for movement, what gets picked up, repeated, and carried forward. That's why the job of shared media isn't to be everywhere. It's to make sure the right proof shows up in the right places with enough consistency that it becomes recognizable. Shared media is not synonymous with social media. Social platforms are part of it, of course, but shared media is bigger than any one platform. It includes any space where content is distributed, discussed, forwarded, remixed, and validated by people, which means the output you're aiming for is not posts. The output is distribution designed on purpose. Shared media done well answers 3 questions. Where does our audience pay attention when they're trying to learn, choose, or decide? What do we want to be known for there? And what proof will people actually carry when they talk about us? Without those answers, shared media becomes a hamster wheel. You can keep publishing, but the signals will be inconsistent, and inconsistency is exactly what prevents trust from compounding. So, if owned is where you build authority and earned is where you gain validation, shared is where you make sure that those signals travel and travel well. The mistake that most teams make is using shared to distribute announcements and content that isn't anchored to proof. That content may be fine, but it's not durable. It doesn't get repeated. It doesn't get saved. It doesn't get forwarded. It doesn't become part of how people describe you when you're not in the room. Proof is what moves. Proof can be a point of view that's specific enough to take a stand. It can be a method people can use, like the PESO model. It can be a result of context. It can be a story that shows the work, not just the outcome. It can be a line of earned validation that reinforces what you claim. It can be a simple visual or checklist that turns your thinking into something shareable. When shared media is working, it's distributing those kinds of assets consistently, not reinventing the wheel every week. One of the most underappreciated advantages of shared media right now is its ability to reinforce credibility, especially in an AI-influenced discovery environment. When the same ideas, proof points, and language show up across multiple places, your owned content, earned validation, community discussion, creator recaps, social commentary, all of that creates corroboration. It increases recognition. It increases the likelihood that your brand is associated with a consistent set of signals, important for both humans and the large language models. This is not about gaming the system. It's about reducing confusion. You want to make it easy for people to describe you accurately. You want it to be easy for the market to repeat what you do and why it matters. Shared media is where that repetition and reinforcement happen. If you want shared to work as a system, you design it the way you would design any other part of the operating system, with intent, constraints, and repeatable components. At a minimum, that means 4 things. You need to have a distribution map. Not what platforms are we on, but where your audience actually pays attention and who they trust, which might not be you in those spaces. Number 2, you need to have a small set of repeatable formats. 3 to 5 formats you can run consistently, because consistency is what beats novelty when you're trying to build recognition. Number 3, you need to have conversation prompts, the questions and the angles that invite people to react, respond, and repeat the message in their own words. Shared media is not a broadcast channel. It's the network distribution layer. And lastly, you need signal consistency rules. These are the proof points, the themes, and the language that you will repeat on purpose, so every post is not a new identity experiment. When you build shared this way, you stop asking, what should we post today? And you start asking, what proof are we moving this week and through which networks? And once you can answer that, the chaos drops dramatically without requiring more content, more time, or more people. Communicators tend to ignore paid media, and overall, paid media tends to be ignored until there's extra budget, or it shows up when leadership wants fast results and everyone starts talking in all caps about pipeline. We're short on pipeline, we're short on revenue, how? In both cases, paid media becomes reactive, and when paid is reactive, it gets expensive. Paid media works best when it has a clear job inside the PESO model operating system. Its job, only job, is to accelerate what is already working. This is exactly why paid can feel like it isn't working when your foundation is shaky. If your message is unclear, your proof is thin, or your ecosystem doesn't answer the questions people have, paid will still deliver impressions and clicks. It just won't deliver trust. And trust is what converts into demand over time. When paid is run strategically, it does 4 things exceptionally well. It increases consistency, it speeds up learning, it scales proof-based messaging, and it supports sequencing. These are system jobs, not run ads, not boost posts, not increase awareness. Paid can accelerate anything, including the wrong things. If your positioning is muddy, paid accelerates that muddiness. If your proof is weak, paid accelerates skepticism. If your story shifts from week to week, paid accelerates inconsistency. That's why paid is almost never the first lever you pull in PESO. It's a lever you pull once the system has something worth accelerating. When you get this right, paid stops feeling like a panic button and starts feeling like an advantage. You know what deserves budget, you know why, and you can explain the results in a way that connects to outcomes instead of vanity metrics. Now, shared and paid media are often managed by different people, different agencies, different budgets, and different definitions of success. That separation is one of the reasons organizations struggle to build momentum. Shared becomes content and community, paid becomes campaigns and conversion. They might both be busy, but they're not reinforcing the same signals. When shared and paid are part of the PESO model operating system, they work like a feedback loop. Shared tells you what the market is actually responding to, and paid helps you scale that response with consistency and speed. Shared media does 2 things at once. It distributes proof and it returns information. It shows you which ideas people repeat when they talk about you, which proof points they cite as credible, which objections show up in comments, direct messages, and community conversations, which examples land, which create confusion, and which words your audience uses when they explain your value to someone else. That is extremely useful because it helps you refine your messaging and strengthen your own ecosystem. It also helps you avoid spending paid budget on a story you think is strong, but the market isn't picking up. When shared works correctly, it becomes your living research and development layer for your program. Once shared shows you what resonates, paid gives you the ability to extend it beyond your existing reach. It does not need to guess. It can take the best performing proof angles, the most saved and shared formats, the clearest explanations of your method, the strongest earned validation lines, the owned assets that hold attention and convert, and put all of that in front of the right audiences at the right time with consistency. This is the difference between boosting and amplifying. Boosting is reactive and random. Amplification is deliberate and tied to proof. So, in a functioning PESO operating system, the order is predictable. Owned creates the source of truth and the proof. Earned adds that third-party credibility or validation. Shared moves that proof through trusted networks and returns signal. And paid accelerates the proven signals to the right audiences at the right time. And then the system loops back. The questions and objections you see in shared becomes additions that you put into your owned. The best performing shared messages also inform your future earned media angles. Paid performance data shows what resonates beyond your existing audiences and what fails outside your bubble. And then the owned media ecosystem gets stronger, which makes earned easier, which makes shared more effective, which makes paid more efficient. When shared and paid are working together, you'll start to see patterns that are hard to miss. You're repeating the same core signals across formats instead of reinventing your message every week. And this is very important for LLMs because they crave consistency. The market starts using your language back to you because your proof is consistent and easy to carry. Your paid program becomes much more efficient over time because it amplifies clarity rather than trying to manufacture it. You can explain your distribution strategy without referencing algorithms or luck because it's built on decision rules, and measurement becomes clearer because shared and paid are tied to outcomes that connect back to the system, authority, credibility, and demand, not isolated channel metrics. It's also when the "we need to post more" conversation changes. You stop chasing volume and you start managing signal strength. Shared is movement, paid is acceleration. Together, they turn the proof you built in earned and owned into momentum that does not depend on a single platform, a single campaign, or a single spike of attention. When shared becomes feed the algorithm and paid becomes drive more revenue, you end up with constant activity and inconsistent signals. That work feels endless, the metrics feel disconnected, and the results do not compound because nothing is reinforcing the same proof across the same networks. But when shared and paid are part of the PESO operating system, their jobs become more clear. This is exactly why the PESO Model Certification puts real structure around shared and paid. You don't just learn how to do social or how to run ads. You build the assets and decision rules that make decisions and distribution repeatable. A distribution map that reflects where your audience actually pays attention, a small set of repeatable shared formats so you're not reinventing the wheel every week, signal consistency rules so your messaging stops changing every time someone new touches it, an amplification plan that defines what proven means when you spend, and measurement tied to outcomes that connect back to authority, credibility, and demand. You walk away with a system you can run, not a pile of tips you will forget the next time your work explodes. In next week's episode, I'll walk you through how to connect all 4 media types and show what it looks like when PESO stops being a framework you reference and becomes an operating system you execute. If you want to learn more about the PESO model and its certification, join us in the SpinSucks community. It's a great place to get advice, brainstorm ideas, and build real relationships with your peers. You can find us at spinsucks.com/community. That's spinsucks.com/community. And make sure you follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. We're posting tips, how-tos, cheat sheets, and more every week. I'll see you next week.